Ladies and gentlemen, respected elders, young minds full of promise, a quiet yet meaningful shift is taking place across the United States as more Americans step inside a mosque for the first time. For years, mosques were often viewed from a distance, noticed as architectural structures in neighborhoods mentioned in news headlines or associated with unfamiliar rituals. But when Americans finally enter one, they are struck not by strangeness, but by a sense of calm, order, and spiritual sincerity that reshapes their understanding of Islam and the people who practice it. The experience begins the moment they remove their shoes and step onto the soft carpet. Many describe an immediate feeling of stillness, a kind of inner quiet they did not expect to find. Unlike churches filled with stained glass, statues, or musical instruments, the mosque presents nothing but open space, a deliberate simplicity meant to free the mind from distraction. For many visitors, this simplicity creates a surprising sense of peace. Then comes the adhan, the Islamic call to prayer, and this is the moment that touches visitors in unexpected places in their hearts. The voice does not demand or command, it gently invites, come to prayer, come to success, God is greater. Even those who do not understand Arabic often describe the sound as ancient, comforting, or spiritual. Christians say it reminds them of the Psalms, Jewish visitors feel echoes of ancient temple worship, and non-religious Americans often say it simply feels pure. When Muslims begin their prayer, most American visitors are surprised by how physical it is. Worship in the mosque is not limited to the mind or voice. It involves the entire body, standing with dignity, bowing in humility, prostrating with the forehead on the ground, and sitting in reflection. Many Americans recognize the resemblance to the way prophets in the Bible prayed, including Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Watching hundreds of worshipers bow in unison is often described as a moment of profound humility and unity, one that feels rare in modern American life. Another aspect that deeply impresses visitors is the equality inside the mosque. In prayer, all stand shoulder to shoulder without ranking or social hierarchy. The doctor stands next to the taxi driver, the immigrant beside the American-born citizen, the wealthy beside the poor. Race, class, and status dissolve into a single line of worship. Many visitors remark that they have never seen such genuine equality in any other religious or social space. When visitors listen to the Friday sermon, they often expect something harsh or political, but instead they hear a calm and practical reminder about kindness, patience, charity, honesty, and being good to one's family and neighbors. The khutbah focuses on moral character, not anger or division, and this simplicity surprises many Americans who had been exposed only to stereotypes. After the prayer, the atmosphere shifts into warmth and community. Children run to their parents, friends embrace, people share food, tea, and light conversation. For many Americans, the mosque feels less like an institution and more like a family gathering, a place where community bonds are strong and genuine. Visitors frequently ask thoughtful questions, and the answers often correct long-held misconceptions. No, Muslims do not worship Muhammad, only God is worshipped. Yes, Muslims believe in the same God of Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Men and women pray separately, mainly for comfort during physical prayer movements, not inequality. Arabic is used in prayer for unity, but personal prayers can be in any language. These clarifications often lead to expressions of relief or surprise, as visitors realize how different their assumptions were from reality. Many Americans experience emotional moments inside the mosque: the soothing sound of Quran recitation, the powerful sight of prostration, the gentle exchange of peace be upon you, and the rare silence after prayer that makes the heart feel light. Beyond worship, visitors are often shocked to learn how much community service takes place inside mosques. Food drives, tutoring programs, free medical clinics, refugee support, disaster relief, and youth mentorship are common. For many, this shows the mosque as not just a spiritual center, but a humanitarian one. The most transformative outcome of these visits is the shift in perception. Fear often grows from lack of contact, but respect grows from personal experience. Many Americans leave the mosque with newfound admiration for Muslims, deeper understanding of Islamic values, and sometimes even new friendships. In a time when misunderstandings easily divide communities, the simple act of stepping inside a mosque has the power to open hearts, dissolve stereotypes, and reveal a truth that feels both human and universal. Muslims are not strangers, they are neighbors, families, and fellow seekers of God. Visiting a mosque becomes not just a lesson in religion, but a lesson in shared humanity. Americans who spend more time inside a mosque often discover details that deepen their respect for the Muslim way of life. One of the most powerful realizations is how discipline shapes the daily rhythm of worship. The 5 daily prayers spread throughout the day create a pattern of mindfulness that many visitors admire. They notice how Muslims pause from work, shopping, or daily tasks to reconnect with God, even if it means taking a brief moment in silence. Some Americans compare this to meditation, others say it reminds them of monastic discipline. Many admit they wish their own lives had such structured spiritual breaks. Another observation that deeply moves visitors is how Muslims pray in the same direction, toward Mecca. This shared orientation symbolizes a unity that transcends borders, languages, and cultures. Americans often say they are amazed by the idea that millions of people around the world bow at the same times, facing the same direction, united in a single spiritual rhythm. For them, this represents a level of global connection rarely seen in any other religion. As visitors stay longer, they also begin to appreciate the ethical foundations of the mosque. They notice boxes for charity, donation drives, and posters promoting community service. They hear messages about caring for parents, helping neighbors, and supporting the poor. Many Americans feel surprised that Islam places such emphasis on social responsibility, especially since this side of the religion is rarely highlighted in mainstream media. Conversations between Muslims and visitors often become some of the most meaningful moments. Americans share their questions, curiosities, and even fears, while Muslims respond with patience, humility, and sincerity. These dialogues frequently dissolve misconceptions within minutes. One visitor might ask why Muslims dress modestly. Another may wonder why Muslims fast during Ramadan. The answers reveal layers of wisdom, self-discipline, gratitude, empathy for the poor, and spiritual reflection. Many Americans walk away saying, "I never knew it was so meaningful." As the visit continues, Americans often observe the beauty of diversity inside the mosque. They see people from Pakistan, Somalia, Egypt, Turkey, Iran, Bosnia, Nigeria, Malaysia, America, and many more places, all praying together. This multicultural harmony leaves a strong impression. Some say it feels like traveling the world without leaving the building. Others say it reflects what America itself should strive to be, a place where differences unite rather than divide. Perhaps the most unexpected shift happens inside the hearts of visitors who enter with fear or uncertainty. The quietness of the prayer hall, the sincerity of worshipers, and the hospitality of the community gradually soften anxieties. What once felt foreign begins to feel familiar. People who once hesitated to approach Muslims start to see them not as others, but as human beings with hopes, families, and faith, just like themselves. Some visitors describe a moment during the visit that stays with them long after they leave. It might be the sound of Quran recitation echoing softly in the hall, or the sight of a father teaching his child how to bow, or an elderly man praying slowly with devotion. These small scenes carry emotional weight because they reveal the human texture of Muslim life, love, discipline, and reverence. Outside the prayer hall, many Americans discover that the mosque also serves as an educational space. They see Quran classes for children, seminars on family health, workshops on financial literacy, interfaith discussions, and youth programs that keep teenagers grounded and purposeful. These activities challenge the stereotype of mosques being closed off or rigid. Instead, visitors see institutions actively nurturing growth, morality, and community engagement. Some Americans even express admiration for how mosques protect family values. They notice how elders are respected, how youth are encouraged to avoid harmful habits, and how marriage and family life are treated with dignity. This emphasis resonates deeply in a society where many feel that traditional values are fading. For a growing number of visitors, the experience of entering a mosque becomes a turning point. It becomes the moment they replace secondhand narratives with first-hand understanding. It becomes the moment when stereotypes fall apart and trust begins to build. For many, it becomes the moment they realize that the spiritual core of Islam is not about conflict, tension, or difference. It is about peace, humility, and remembrance of God. When these visitors return home, they often speak differently about Muslims. Parents tell their children what they learned. Teachers share insights with classrooms. Neighbors start conversations instead of crossing the street. The change is small but powerful, quiet but transformative. It begins with a door opening and a heart opening with it. And in this simple experience, Americans often discover one of the most profound truths of all, that faith, when experienced directly instead of judged from afar, has the power to connect people in ways nothing else can. Visiting a mosque does not convert people, it connects people. It does not erase differences, it brings respect. It does not force agreement, it fosters understanding. And in a nation as beautifully diverse as the United States, that understanding might be exactly what is needed most. Something unexpected begins to happen inside them. The stillness of the mosque, the absence of noise, and the gentle rhythm of people lining up shoulder to shoulder creates a sense of human equality that many Americans quietly admire, yet rarely witness in daily life. There are no very important person seats, no divisions based on wealth, job titles, or social rank. A surgeon stands next to a taxi driver, a professor stands next to a grocery worker, a teenager stands next to an elderly man. For a moment, everyone is the same, simply a human being standing before the Creator. This simplicity often moves American visitors more than anything else. It is a reminder that faith, at its core, is supposed to humble the heart, not inflate the ego. And when they watch Muslims bow and place their foreheads on the ground, they see not submission to oppression, but submission to a higher power, a humility that modern society rarely encourages. Many Americans whisper later that this was the first time in years they felt a spiritual atmosphere that wasn't rushed, noisy, or focused on performance. Inside the mosque, spirituality feels uncluttered, clean, direct. After the prayer ends, visitors are often surprised to see how the mood instantly shifts from solemn to warm and social. Smiles replace silence. Worshippers greet each other with Assalamu alaikum, a phrase that means peace be upon you. The Americans often react with surprise, realizing Muslims literally greet each other by wishing peace. Children run around the prayer hall, families gather in circles, and strangers are invited to sit down without hesitation. Hospitality is instinctive here. Someone offers dates, another offers tea, another starts explaining the architecture, the history, or the meaning of the prayer. Americans frequently comment that they expected formality or barriers, but instead they found comfort, almost like walking into a family gathering rather than a religious institution. As they walk through the mosque's quiet hallways, they begin noticing subtle details: the absence of music, the absence of religious statues, the presence of geometric designs, calligraphy, and Quranic verses that speak about mercy, justice, compassion, and patience. Many are surprised to read verses about Jesus, Moses, Mary, and the stories they grew up hearing in church. Their eyebrows rise, their hearts soften. They say things like, "I didn't know Muslims believed this too," and this becomes the turning point. Misunderstanding begins to dissolve. The gap that once felt huge suddenly feels small. The mosque is no longer a mysterious place but a familiar one, a house of prayer that shares roots with their own religious upbringing. When the imam sits with the visitors afterward, he answers their questions not with debate, but with calm explanations. He talks about the purpose of prayer, the meaning of worship, the importance of charity, the value of family, and the centrality of peace in Islam. Many Americans expected defensiveness or tension, but instead they encountered gentleness, something they didn't see on the news. They asked difficult questions about terrorism, oppression, culture, and media portrayals. The imam responds with honesty, clarity, and respect, and something changes inside them for the first time. They feel Muslims do not hate them, do not oppose them, do not want to replace or destroy their identity. Instead, they see that Muslims simply want to practice their faith in peace, raise their children with values, and live with dignity, just like anyone else. As the visit comes to an end, the Americans step outside the mosque with a quiet realization settling inside them. Fear was created by distance, and understanding was born from proximity. They came with assumptions, but they leave with appreciation. They came with questions, but they leave with connection. They came as strangers, but they leave with respect. And almost every visitor says the same sentence before walking away. This place felt peaceful, more peaceful than I expected. What truly surprised them was not the architecture or the rituals. It was the humanity, the handshake, the smile, the shared values, the recognition that Muslims aren't the others they once imagined. They are neighbors, co-workers, classmates, and fellow human beings, searching for meaning and guidance in a world full of noise. And in that quiet space inside the mosque, Americans experience something precious. They see Islam not as a headline, but as a lived reality, a faith rooted in humility, family, devotion, peace, and a deep longing for the Creator. They begin to understand why Muslims pray the way they pray, why they protect these places, why they gather here 5 times a day, why the mosque is not just a building, it is a sanctuary for the heart. And for many Americans, that first visit becomes a seed of curiosity, respect, and sometimes even spiritual transformation. Because once a heart witnesses sincerity, it cannot unsee it. Once a heart feels peace, it cannot forget it. And once a heart recognizes truth, it begins a journey, often quietly, slowly, and beautifully. As these American visitors leave the main prayer hall and step into the outer courtyard, they begin to notice another layer of Muslim life that often goes unseen, the sense of community responsibility. They watch volunteers sweeping the floors without being asked, youth groups organizing charity boxes, and elders welcoming newcomers with gentle nods. Nothing feels like a performance. Everything feels natural. Many Americans, accustomed to a culture where community bonds have weakened over time, are quietly moved by how Muslims still prioritize collective care. They realize something profound. A mosque is not just a spiritual place, it is a community heartbeat. Someone explains to them that in Islam, feeding the hungry, caring for the poor, and visiting the sick are not optional acts of kindness, they are obligations. This surprises many Americans who had only seen Islam through political headlines rather than through moral teachings. When they hear that the mosque opens its doors for the homeless during winter storms, hosts interfaith dinners, and organizes food drives, their eyes widen. Why don't we hear about this on the news, they ask. And the Muslims simply smile, as if they have heard this question 1,000 times before. In the next room, the Americans come across shelves lined with shoes neatly arranged by volunteers. They see a group of children sitting in a circle learning Arabic letters, their voices echoing with innocence as they repeat each sound. One of the visitors whispers that it reminds him of his own childhood memories of Sunday school. For the first time, he sees Muslim families not as strangers, but as people who share the same hopes for their children, good values, good manners, a good future. As they continue walking, they pass by a classroom where a group of women are studying the Quran with a female instructor. The atmosphere is calm, intellectual, and engaging. One American woman, previously influenced by stereotypes about Muslim women, watches with fascination. She expected silence or oppression. Instead, she sees confidence, leadership, and curiosity. The women inside laugh, ask questions, take notes, and discuss moral lessons with enthusiasm. I didn't know Muslim women were this active in their community, she says softly. This single moment rewrites years of misconceptions for her. In the corner of the mosque, the visitors find a small library filled with books about theology, history, science, and biographies of prophets. One visitor picks up a book about Maryam, surprised that an entire chapter in the Quran is dedicated to her story. He reads a passage highlighting her purity, courage, and devotion, and his voice cracks as he reads it aloud. This feels familiar, he says. It feels like the same Mary I grew up believing in. A quiet realization begins to take form inside him. The connection between these faiths is far deeper than he ever imagined. As they walk toward the exit, they encounter a group of young Muslim adults engaged in a discussion about social justice, education, career goals, and their hopes for the future of their community. The Americans listen and are surprised by how patriotic and community-focused these young Muslims are. They talk about wanting safer neighborhoods, better schools, more unity, and less hatred, dreams that every American can relate to. The visitors feel something they hadn't expected: alignment. Shared hopes, shared worries, shared dreams, and suddenly Islam doesn't feel like a foreign religion. It feels like a familiar moral compass expressed through a different language. Before leaving, the Imam invites the visitors to stand in the same prayer rows where Muslims stand. He demonstrates how Muslims raise their hands, bow, and prostrate. When the visitors try the movements themselves, something shifts inside them. The act of placing their forehead to the ground creates a feeling of humility they did not anticipate. One visitor says it makes him feel grounded, quiet, and small in a comforting way, like releasing the weight of the world for a moment. Another says it felt like a reset button for the soul. When they stand up again, they look at each other with soft eyes, as if they've just shared something deeply human and undisguised. The Imam smiles gently and says, "This is what we do 5 times a day, to reconnect with God, with ourselves, and with our purpose." The Americans nod slowly, absorbing the meaning behind the words. And in that moment, many of them silently acknowledge something they rarely admit: they have been spiritually hungry for a long time. As the visit concludes and they walk toward their cars, they talk about what surprised them most: the peace, the humility, the unity, the warmth, the humanity. They confess that the media had shown them only conflict and chaos, never compassion and community. And each of them carries home a subtle but profound shift in perception. They may forget the architecture. They may forget the explanations. But they will not forget how the mosque made them feel. And they will not forget how Muslims treated them with respect, generosity, sincerity, and an open door. That experience becomes a small seed in their hearts, quiet, gentle, but growing. A seed that challenges prejudice, dissolves fear, and nurtures understanding. Because once they see the inside of a mosque with their own eyes, the world outside never looks the same again. As days pass after their first visit, something unexpected begins happening inside these American visitors. The memory of the mosque lingers, not as an event, but as a feeling. The quietness of the prayer hall returns to them during stressful moments at work. The humility of the bow echoes in their minds when they feel overwhelmed. The warmth of the community replays when they feel lonely. They begin to realize that what they witnessed inside the mosque was not just a religious ritual, it was an emotional language, one they didn't know their soul was craving. One of the visitors finds himself replaying the sound of the call to prayer on YouTube late at night. The melodic voice, which once felt foreign, now pulls at his heart with a strange familiarity. He doesn't understand the words, but he feels the sincerity. Another visitor finds herself reading about the Prophet Muhammad, surprised to learn about his compassion, gentleness, honesty, and deep respect for women. She wonders why she had never been taught this side of his character before. She realizes that her understanding of Islam was shaped by headlines, not by truth. A third visitor begins thinking about the moment he placed his forehead on the ground. It becomes a symbol of something he has been missing. A moment of surrender, of stillness, of letting go. For years he carried burdens silently, feeling he always had to be strong, But in that brief moment inside the mosque, he felt permission to be human again. As these feelings grow, curiosity takes root. The visitors begin searching for answers quietly, privately, without telling anyone. They watch videos explaining the meaning of prayer, the purpose of the mosque, and the values of Islam. They discover that Islam emphasizes justice, forgiveness, moral character, kindness to parents, care for neighbors, and defending the vulnerable. They are surprised to learn that the Prophet Muhammad taught that the best people are those who benefit humanity. One visitor reads a hadith where the Prophet said, "A smile is charity," and he cannot help but smile himself. Something about that simplicity touches him deeply. The more they learn, the more they realize that Islam is not about domination or violence. It's about discipline, humility, compassion, and accountability before the Creator. Slowly, the gap between What they believed about Muslims and who Muslims actually are begins to close. One night, a visitor sits quietly on her porch, thinking about the Muslim women she saw studying in the mosque. She remembers their confidence, their laughter, their clarity. She contrasts that with the stereotypes she once heard, and she whispers to herself, almost embarrassed, I was wrong. At the same time, another visitor finds himself deeply moved by the story of Bilal, the Ethiopian companion of the Prophet who rose from slavery to become the first caller to prayer. The idea that Islam uplifted the oppressed and stood against racism touches something deep inside him as an American. He sees a connection between the values he believes in and the values Islam promotes. Day by day, their hearts soften. Day by day, the misunderstandings fade. Day by day, the beauty of what they witnessed inside the mosque grows inside them like a quiet flame. Eventually, they start reaching out to the Muslims they met. They ask more questions, not to argue, but to understand. They attend open houses, community dinners, and interfaith gatherings. Some of them even return to the mosque on their own without any invitation. And when they walk in, the Muslims recognize them, greet them with warm smiles, and welcome them like old friends. No pressure, no judgment, no expectations. Just hospitality, just humanity. One day, during their second or third visit, something surprising happens. The Imam does not explain anything. Instead, he simply sits with them and asks, "How are you feeling?" That simple question breaks something open in their hearts. They begin sharing their worries, their struggles, their stress, things they hadn't told anyone. And the Imam listens, not as a scholar, but as a human being who cares. He reminds them that every soul searches for peace and every heart has a door that opens to God. For the first time in a long time, they feel understood, not politically, not socially, but spiritually. And in that moment, they realize why Muslims pray the way they do, why they protect their mosques, why they hold onto their faith so strongly. Because in a world that often feels chaotic, harsh, and empty, Islam gives them structure, purpose, direction, and peace. It gives them a place to recharge not just their minds, but their hearts. For many Americans, this is the moment when Islam stops being a religion of others and starts becoming a faith that speaks to their own soul. Their journey does not end here. It begins quietly, gently, beautifully. As time moves forward, something begins to change inside the hearts of those Americans who once walked into the mosque as curious visitors. The small seeds planted during that first encounter grow quietly, almost invisibly, until one day they realize that their perception of Muslims and of themselves has transformed in ways they never expected. They begin noticing Muslims in their daily lives, a cashier smiling kindly at a customer, a doctor offering comfort to a worried patient, a neighbor helping carry groceries, a coworker sharing lunch and jokes during a break. These faces now feel familiar. The distance that used to exist is gone. They see humanity where they once saw difference, and more importantly, they see sincerity where they once saw mystery. What surprises them most is that the peace they felt inside the mosque doesn't fade with time. It follows them outside. It appears in moments they need comfort. It returns in moments they need direction. It reminds them of a truth they had forgotten, that faith is not about fear, it's about connection. It's about grounding the soul in something real. One night, one of the visitors lies awake thinking about the sound of the call to prayer, the calmness of the bow, the unity of the rose. He realizes that he has never felt that level of clarity in any other place. Another sits in her living room scrolling through articles about Islam, tears forming unexpectedly when she reads verses speaking about hope, forgiveness, and the nearness of God. She had spent years searching for spiritual fulfillment in countless directions, yet ironically found a sense of completion in a faith she once misunderstood. A third visitor sits at a cafe with a Muslim coworker asking questions not out of curiosity anymore, but out of longing. "How do you always stay so calm?" he asks. The coworker smiles and replies, "When you trust God, you stop carrying everything alone." That sentence stays with him for days. Eventually, some of these visitors return to the mosque not as observers, but as seekers. Their steps feel lighter this time. Their hearts feel open. And when they walk through the door, the same warmth greets them, a handshake, a smile. and the familiar phrase, "Peace be upon you." This time, the peace feels personal. They sit quietly in the back as Muslims line up for prayer. They watch the unity again, the synchronous movements, the shared devotion, the stillness that falls over the room like a blanket of tranquility. And without thinking, without planning, without trying, something inside them softens and breaks open. A realization settles deep in their chest. This is what faith is supposed to feel like. This is what it means to be connected to something greater than the noise of the world. This is what it means to surrender the burdens one can no longer carry alone. After the prayer ends, the imam approaches them with a gentle smile, sensing the emotion in their faces. "You feel something, don't you?" he asks kindly. They nod, unable to put it into words. He responds softly, "That feeling is the heart recognizing truth." In that moment, everything becomes clear. Islam was never the enemy they were taught to fear. The mosque was never the threat they imagined. Muslims were never the strangers they assumed. The barriers were built by ignorance, and now, finally, they are falling. Some visitors walk away that day with a new respect, some walk away with admiration, and some walk away with a spark that may someday lead them toward a journey of faith. But all of them walk away with something precious, understanding, and that understanding becomes more than just knowledge. It becomes a shield against prejudice, a reminder of shared humanity, and a bridge that connects two worlds that were never meant to be divided. As they step outside one last time, the sun setting behind them, they look back at the mosque, not as a mysterious structure, but as a place of peace, peace they felt, peace they witnessed, peace they carried home. And in that final moment, each of them realizes a simple truth that will stay with them forever. Sometimes, one visit is enough to change a lifetime of assumptions. Sometimes, one moment of sincerity can rewrite years of misunderstanding, and sometimes, one step inside a mosque can open a door inside the heart that never closes again.